Hey, it's the Encores Club. On today's episode, we tackle new albums from 80s legends Erasure and The Killers, a band who often sounds like they are trying to get back to the 80s. As always, the wicked sharp Rhonda from Daily Durani is our co-host. Big changes at Daily Durani launched today. Tell us about that.
Well, I thought it was going to be a great idea to revamp the website to commemorate, 10 years. It's been 10 years since I've actually less than that, since I built the site to begin with. But that was supposed to be like a less than 1 week fix, and it's been almost 3 weeks now. So we're doing really well. But it's out, it's live. Hopefully people will see it and come visit. And it's changed a lot from being just a blog site to now it's like we're going to do real content, and I'm looking forward to all the changes. So hopefully people will stick with us for the journey.
I was on it this morning. I think it looks fantastic. I know I'm your intern, so I am legally obligated to say that, but it looks great. So I'm excited to keep adding to it. Our special guest today was born and raised in Iowa. He has more than a few Dustland fairy tales he can share with us about growing up in the heartland, listening to Duran Duran, U2, and Depeche Mode. He was also the only other guy at a Daily Durani concert party in Vegas a few years ago, so we became instant friends. Welcome, Jeff. Am I correct? It's not just Jeff today. You have some special friends with you as well.
Sort of, yep. I got my boxer, Vivi.
Yay! Oh, so cute.
Just kind of resting near me, and she's wondering why in the heck is going on here. All this talking. And then I have an African gray bird. She's in the background. If you hear her chirp and bleep and whistle and do R2D2 noises, that's her, not me. So
very cool. Maybe we can get her a guest spot on the next Duran Duran album.
I tell you what, she can sing along to a Night Boat by Duran Duran. She does some of the keyboard parts, and there's also a song by VCMG, which ironically is Vince Clarke and Martin Gore from Depeche Mode. Vince Clarke is Erasure, and they have this song called Wind Up Robot. And there's a little bit in there where it's kind of a techno repetitive noise, and every time I play that song, she goes right along with it. So
okay, we're on the fly here, but we're making that a bonus track on today's episode. We're going to make Jeff send us that video, and we will add it to the end of today's episode. So make sure you stay tuned to the very end today so you can see that performance.
Right.
First up today, let's talk about Erasure's The Neon, the band's 18th album. That in alone is an amazing accomplishment. For this one, Vince Clarke dusted off the old analog synths, and the band tried to recapture some of the 80s joy. Were they successful? Let's have a quick listen.
I ain't gonna keep quiet. Oh, you really have to show it.
That was Shot a Satellite off of the new Erasure album, The Neon. My copy just arrived yesterday. Mute Records absolutely knocked it out of the park. This orange vinyl is one of the brightest colored vinyls I've ever seen, and it is an absolute beautiful pressing. The low end on it absolutely rocks my music room. Coming right out of the gates, I'm just going to throw it out there for me. I think it's their best album since 88's The Innocents. I know there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with me, but there's just something about this album. Maybe it's the time it came out and the difficulties we're feeling with 2020, or I'm just kind of reconnecting with that old analog 80s synth vibe to it. But for me, it is absolutely a brilliant album. I love it start to finish. Been listening to it since it came out. Jeff, what do you think?
I've always liked Erasure. They're not one of my core bands that I collect on or follow, on a day-to-day basis, but I'm always intrigued by what they do. To me, I haven't really heard anything new in the last 15 years, and just talking with some friends, it sounds like I didn't miss that much. Here and there was some things, but so yeah, I kind of went in with an open mind and saying, hey, this is Erasure. I know I'm going to get some good songs, blah, blah, blah. And I think the moment I started it up and I played Hey Now, I think within the first 10 seconds, I'm like, oh my God, this is a classic Erasure, sugar gum, bubble pop, can't get it out of my head for 3 weeks type of song. And it did not disappoint. So from a standpoint, and I also went in with the attitude saying, hey, I'm going to try and see if I can figure out that first single. because all of Erasure's huge hits in the US, I mean, they've just been catchy as hell, you know, instant pop gratification, whatnot. And I think even by the end of the first listen of Hey Now, track 1, I had said, okay, I bet you that was the lead single. And sure enough, I just some basic research, you know, that seems to be the case. You know, everything is, it's weird how things are released now in terms of what's really a single and what's not. But anyway, I think I was instantly impressed by that song. I love it. I'll probably put it on my gym playlist. I think it's a great track, and it's just got that classic Erasure hook that is undeniable Erasure. So from that standpoint, it got off to a great start. It took me a while to get through the rest of the albums. I don't know if I had a short attention span, you know, as I was doing other things or whatnot, but Shot a Satellite, that stuck out to me. And then the Diamond song.
Yes.
Diamond Eyes.
Diamond Lines, yep. So I think those are by far the 3 standout tracks for me. But yeah, I think it was a real solid effort. I'll keep it in my library. I'll listen to it every once in a while. And it has, again, it just had that classic Erasure sound throughout. And I thought it was very consistent. So if I were to, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give it probably an 8.5. I was very glad it was a very good listen for me.
Nice. And you mentioned the classic Erasure sound. I've read some reviews on it just this morning, and some critics said they sound too comfortable. They're going back to what they do best. And I'm like, why is that a criticism? Rhonda, do you like when bands go back to what they do best, or do you want them to keep pushing boundaries?
I like when they push boundaries. That's not a determining factor on whether I like an album or not. You know, it's a bonus. It's, you know, a plus. You pick a band because they resonate with you. And I think that when they continue to resonate with you, and even if they're moving along, that's a great thing. It's also a great thing, though, if they're doing what they do best. I don't know why that would be a criticism, to be honest. I don't. I will say that I'm in that camp with this album. You know, I like Neon because it is Erasure. There's no surprises for me. I knew what I was going to get, and I listened to it. I loved the first song, which is Hey Now. My actual favorite on the whole album is Tower of Love, though. For me, I like that because it had like this dark tinge to it. It actually reminded me a lot of something Depeche Mode might have done back in the day. The album does not feel particularly experimental or innovative or anything like that. But I don't think that every album has to be, you know? Maybe that's just the old person in me coming out. I don't know. But I like when I can pick up, you know, a piece of music and listen to it and know what I'm getting and be satisfied. And that's exactly what this did for me. So I
think the new Pet Shop Boys was the exact same record.
It totally was.
It was just like, here's what we do best. Duran Duran did that with All You Need Is Now, again, going back to the analog synths. And then they turn around and push the boundaries with Paper Gods, which some of us love, some of us don't love. But if you're an Erasure fan, or if you're just an 80s synth pop fan at all, I think the Neon is one of those albums you're going to put on, you're going to be taken back to dance clubs of the late 80s, and you're going to have a great time.
Yeah, it was great.
I think I think it's a very lean record. You know, it's not too long. It's hard, you know, you're not going to get bored listening to it. You know, you can listen to it. I don't know what the official track listing is, but, you know, at 45 minutes or so. But I think a lot of artists are going back to that, you know, kind of format that we grew up with in the 80s, you know, where you had the A side, the B side, 40, 45 minutes of music. And I think that's a good thing. And I think they did a really good job of, you know, not putting in a lot of, there wasn't a lot of filler. It was a very consistent album, very good listen.
And there's not 4 different versions with 3 extra tracks here, 2 extra tracks here. I mean, thank you, Mute Records, for not making us chase all the different songs down. Hopefully, like you said, that's a trend. Let's get back to just, here's our album. This is the album as we want to present it. And, you know, that way we're not trying to find all these extra B-sides and worrying about where they were and get the Target exclusive or the Walmart exclusive. Just give us the album as we want to hear
Give
it.
it to us. Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, next up, we're going to implode the Mirage. Rhonda, what does that mean?
Well, your guess is as good as mine on that. I'm not going there. But I will say it's the 6th album by the Killers. There's been some discussion over the years as to whether they've kind of just abandoned the sound that they had on Hot Fuss, or if it's just that they've never quite gotten back to it. I think we can get into that. What I would like to point out is this is the first album that they did without the guitarist, and it's their founding guy, Dave Koenig. And I think that may have, really entered into the way this album was recorded. I'd like to take a listen to Caution, because Caution's the first, single off the album, and then we'll get into it.
All right. Off of Imploding the Mirage by the Killers, this is Caution.
Her mama was a dancer, and that's all that she knew. Cause when you live in the desert.
Right, and that was Caution. That single actually just went to #1 on the Billboard charts for alternative. I'm going to just jump in and give my review since I've got the mic anyway. I have to say that I went in very cautiously with this album. I was expecting another Wonderful, Wonderful, which was my least favorite of all of the Killers albums. I was pleasantly surprised. The Killers just have this way of recording that just the sound is big. And as soon as I heard the first song off the album, which for whatever reason is escaping me at the moment, why? Dying Breed, right? Is that the first one?
Was it?
Anyway, the first track.
I didn't listen to any of the tracks till the album got released.
Oh no, I meant right. Yeah, when it came out, I didn't listen to anything until it was released.
I think Caution was the first one that came out.
No. I mean the first track off the album.
My Own Silver Morning.
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
That's right. So when I heard that, the very first thing I thought was, oh my gosh, it sounds a lot more like Battleborn. Is that where we're headed with this? And then, then I heard Blowback. Blowback reminded me much more of a Brandon Flowers like solo song. But then, there's Lightning Fields. Lightning Fields has Katie Lang on it, and Running Towards a Place. All of it has this massive sound. It's like a wall of sound that just hits you. And that I find is more reminiscent of their recordings off of like Battleborn, or even off of Day and Age to some degree in some songs. Hot Fuss, though, which happens to be my favorite, the Killers album, that song's gone. I mean, they don't have that anymore. They don't really do the Euro synth pop. And so if that's what you're looking for, I think they're going to surprise you and maybe, make you sad. But I think that they've just kind of evolved past that. What do you think, Jason?
I have a lot of thoughts on this one. I loved Hot Fuss when it came out. For me, Hot Fuss, much like Turn on the Bright Lights by Interpol, those were two very formidable albums for me in the early 2000s, really got me back into new music. And then in terms of my interest in both bands, it just nosedived pretty quickly. There's parts of Sam's Town I liked, but by the end of Sam's Town, I kind of lost interest. I came back last album to kind of revisit them. Went to see the Wonderful, Wonderful tour, wasn't blown away. I thought the album was very disappointing. But this album got me thinking. I like the title, Imploding the Mirage, because for me, I think the Mirage is the Killers and Hot Fuss. Me wanting them to be that band. And that's a mirage now, because in a lot of ways, the Killers are a mirage, because it's really just Brandon at this point. As a drummer, I'll say Ronnie is amazing. I love him as a drummer, but the drummer doesn't really dictate a band's sound so much as carry the momentum of it. So I went in with a fresh frame of mind with it, and there's quite a bit on here I was pleasantly surprised by. I loved Blowback. I think that's one of my favorite singles they've done, even though every time he sings Sucking on a Tic Tac, I just start cracking up for some reason. I thought the krautrock beat of Dying Breed was very interesting. But for me, and this is always my problem for me with the Killers, is the verses are really interesting. There's some space to them. I thought Adam from the War on Drugs being a part of this album was very evident. I'm a huge fan of the War on Drugs, and he brought some space to the music that isn't always there because they're so bombastic. And, the verses, I'm like, yes, it's sucking me in. And then the choruses just explode. And I think that's what the Killers do, and they want to blow the roof off the stadium every single time. But sometimes you need kind of the yin and yang of it, and you don't always have to blow the roof off the stadium, because when you do it every single time, it just kind of wears you down as a listener. Every single person's going to mention the fact that Brandon has been trying to rewrite Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen on every single album. I mean, obviously his love for Springsteen is very evident on Blowback. Because the blacktop's burning up, what's left of the fuse. I mean, that's like, I want to be a Springsteen type songwriter. So that happens throughout the album. But I thought Caution, the first verse especially, let me introduce you to the featherweight queen. She's got Hollywood eyes, but she can't shoot what's seen. That whole song especially really captures what the Killers do best, and kind of captures the spirit of Las Vegas, being out here in the desert. I can listen to that as I'm driving through the desert. I'm like, I get where he's coming from with this. So even though the choruses were a little over the top for me, it won me back over into the Killers camp, and I did not expect that. I kind of expected to come in being very snarky, saying I'm sick of Brandon Flowers, but well done. This album really does some stuff that I haven't heard from them since Hot Fuss, in terms of really being interesting and engaging. So for me, it was a win. I would say as a middle of the road Killers fan, it pulled me back in. I know you two are a lot more into the Killers. So Jeff, as a diehard fan who's been with them every step of the way, what was your thoughts?
I love it. I think it's, I think for me, I started out with Hot Fuss just because everyone compared them to U2 and Duran Duran. So, I was like, hey, I got to check them out. Loved Hot Fuss. And I think for me, just a little history, then I bought Sam's Town, I bought Sawdust, I bought, Day and Age. The week that they were released, I listened to them once or twice, but they didn't really capture, I didn't really, I think I was expecting Hot Fuss too, as probably most people were, and I know that Sam's Town they lost a lot of fans of Sam's Town, but, finally when Battleborn was released, I kind of went through a moment as like, oh my gosh, I can't stop listening to Battleborn. I love this album. I went back and rediscovered Sam's Town, Day and Age. Completely changed my, I just had to listen to it a little bit more and stuff. And I think Sam's Town is right up there with Hot Fuss. I think it's a great album. It still gets some critical, feedback from a lot of people, but there's a lot of tight songs. I think with once Battleborn and once Dave and Mark kind of started to distance themselves from the band, I think it kind of suffered on Wonderful Wonderful. So I think out of all the albums, Wonderful Wonderful is, I still like it. I don't listen to it as much. Every couple of months I'll pull it out and give it another listen. There are great songs on that album. The Man, I think, was a fantastic single. It did well for them. Wonderful Wonderful is a good song. Run for Cover. But other than that, most of that stuff seemed more like a solo Brandon Flowers effort. So I kind of had high expectations for this next album. And it was one of the few instances where I think when I set those high expectations and I listened to the whole album in whole and they were satisfied, it just made me appreciate the album even more, I think. My Own Soul's Warning, I can't get that song. I've listened to that song probably 300 times since they released it as a preview single. It's going to come across great live. I'm really bummed that the band had to cancel the tour because of COVID, because I think there's probably 4 or 5 songs that are just going to sound fantastic live and will integrate with their catalog perfectly. Caution was a great single. I know it, like Rhonda mentioned, it did really well on alternative and adult alternative radio, I believe, and it was a great way to introduce the album, I think, for people. I think there's moments that they kind of reference the new wave, the Hot Fuss. There's lots of keyboards in there. They're kind of buried in back, but there's some interesting things going on with the keyboards where I can see some comparisons are made to to the new wave Hot Fuss stuff. But if I would say I think it's more comparable to probably Sam's Town and Battleborn. Kind of what you alluded to with the big bombastic sound or whatever. But overall, very happy with this album. Can't wait for the next one. I can't wait to hear these songs live. Trying to think of the my other favorite song I really want to comment, Lightning Fields. I love Lightning Fields, Fire and Bone. My God's a good song. I think the only song that really hasn't resonated with me is probably Running Towards a Place. So I don't know if I just need to.
It's on my notes as one of my favorites. I was like, I think
Really?
he's going to
Okay.
say Running Towards a Place. It sounds like Fleetwood Mac mixed with the War on Drugs. But again, maybe not as a killer song, but it had a very late 80s Fleetwood Mac sound to it. That was like, ooh, I could get into this.
I felt like that was the case on a lot of the songs. I could hear, we have a lot of Fleetwood Mac in our collection, and I heard a lot of that. And of course, I mean, it makes sense because Lindsey Buckingham played, you know, Elise guitar on Caution, but I think that, you know, it resonated throughout the album. I was going to ask you guys, how do both of you feel about the fact that, you know, there's no dedicated guitarist right now? I realize in the next album, Dave's supposed to come back. And has been recording them, but for this one, there wasn't. Do you think it made a difference?
Well, as an Iowa boy, I'm going to throw it on. I'm disappointed in Dave. That's just like, I think he's kind of throwing a little baby trip, you know, or something, or, you know, he's from Iowa too, originally. So,
I didn't know.
But I, you know, he's had his time away from the band. I really hope he can come back because he's got some huge, you know, killer-esque, you know, guitar parts that have, you know, laid the foundation for their whole band, the band and the whole career. And it, you know, I really hope he comes back. But do you just think it's odd that he's still a member and he wasn't even on the album?
It drives me insane. Like, you're either in the band or you're not. You have to make a decision because it's unfair to the rest of the band. I mean,
Let's move forward.
For me, it's not the Killers if he's not involved. So let's just call it a Brandon Flowers album. Either way, I'm going to enjoy it, but he's so important to the band. I mean, the first time I saw them was 2004. They were supporting a band called Stella Star at a little bar in Denver, and they blew me away. But a lot of what blew me away was the guitar work on Hot Fuss. And, you know, it's not the same without them. I think a lot of bands who lose their primary guitar player, it's different. But it also...
I don't have any idea what that means.
Yeah.
No idea.
I miss you, Wendy. But it also gave this album a lot more room to try different things, and I think we kind of enjoy doing that. It seems like, you know, in a way he kind of embraced it for a change. I like the lyric, I think it's in the opening song, because when I hit the ground it made a messed up sound, like emotionally, hey, these guys aren't coming back and the sound isn't right without them, so let's try some different stuff and bring in some different people. And I think the collaborations really worked here. I think the production on Wonderful absolutely ruined the whole album. There is some good songs there, but it seemed to work out well here. But I think we all agree he needs to come back for it to be the Killers.
I think that'd be great. Can I make a couple more comments about the back half of the album?
Absolutely.
Sure, go ahead.
Right. One of the other songs that I can't get enough of is When the Dreams Run Dry. So the thing that stood out to me was the outro at the end. And I asked my friend Trevor, if, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, I love, you know, this descending, you know, the scale in Brandon's vocal melodies at the end in the outro. And Trevor's got a musical ear. He plays instruments, he records music, and you know, he went out and actually found that same vocal progression where he's, you know, da 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 da, that part. And he it was a collaborative effort between, like, with is it Johnny Cash? The country legend. I think Willie Nelson. Let me pull up his text. But it was almost identical. So he was referencing.
I think that's the thing with the Killers that I really enjoy, is that the more I get into them and I don't just focus on just the music, the more I find out there's all these little Easter eggs and things that they put in there. And I had no idea.
Yeah, it's there's a song, it's called it's Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, and the Highwaymen.
Oh.
So if anyone wants to check that out, I mean, the vocal progression at the end of in the outro for that song is very identical to two parts in that song. And so, you know, not only is Brandon, you know, referencing, you know, the Cars, you know, the U2 and all the, you know, everyone that was kind of stereotypical, you know, Bruce Springsteen, you know, for Sam's Town or whatever, you know, and stuff. he's also got those country roots. And I think that's kind of been a progression in their, in their desert landscape songs, over the past, 3 or 4 albums and stuff. They've been very consistent in the themes, I think, outside of Hot Fuss. I think Hot Fuss is the outlier.
I do too.
Yeah, so, I mean, there has been a progression. I think they've been very consistent with, some of those themes and what Brandon is referencing in his writing. And then finally, Imploding the Mirage. I was kind of expecting a deep, dark song, just kind of, with the, and then we get this little light pop ditty. And I was like, oh my God, that totally works. And that would be like a total song that could have been on Sawdust, kind of as an outtake or a fun track, but it works perfectly. And I thought it was just a great positive way to end the album.
It was a bow. It was like a bow that was tied up at the end. At least that's how I saw it.
Yeah.
And as someone who relies on tourism in Las Vegas to make a living, I'd like to point out the Mirage has not been imploded, and it's actually opened 5 hours ago. It is reopened as of today. So
oh, really?
Wow. It's on the news. So the Mirage is not imploded, and it is now open. So don't come to Vegas yet, though. There's a pandemic. Stay home. But when it is back and running, come out and visit us.
You've been only one of the few. I went out to Vegas 5 weeks ago. So yeah, you're the only person of my crew I've been able to see over this past.
I know the beard impressed me.
Yeah.
Mine hasn't grown in like that, but I'm trying. So.
It's hardcore, Jeff. I gotta say, wow. I was so surprised. I'm like, oh my God.
It's me.
Yeah, I like it.
Thanks.
So we always end up every episode of the Encores Club by choosing which of these 2 albums we are going to keep in rotation the most. For me, it's definitely Erasure's The Neon, just a little more my style. And as much as I really enjoy the music on this one with the Killers, something about Brandon's lyrics, they always just they start to grate on me after a while. It's almost, in a way, he wants to be Springsteen, but for me, it's a little too Garth Brooks at times. But at the same time, I like that. But I'm not going to listen to it as much as I would listen to Erasure. So I'm going with The Neon. How about you, Rhonda?
It's not even a contest.
I know.
Imploding Mirage is already, I bought the album. I've got shirts coming. I'm sold. Sold.
And Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, Killers being one of my, 4 core bands, it's probably not even really close for me. I mean, I'll listen to the Erasure album every once in a while, but I'm sure, I'll be listening to one of, songs off of this album for, it'll probably be on every single playlist that I ever create again. So
Blowback's definitely gonna be one of my favorite songs of the year. So I am very excited. I kind of revisited the Killers. That is another episode of the Encores Club. If you enjoy what you're watching with us, please hit subscribe below and follow us. We have new episodes coming out as often as we can get away from the cats, the dogs, and the children. That's just Rhonda.
And the birds.
The kids and the birds. But stay tuned. After we wrap up today, like I promised you, Jeff's going to include some special performance by the bird. So stay tuned to that. Find us on Twitter at Encores Club, and we will see you again soon. Thank you, Jeff, for joining Rhonda and I on today's episode.
Thanks.
You know you gotta feel it.
So hopefully she'll kick in here a little bit.
Oh my gosh.
She'll do it like 30 times in a row, right along with the song. See?
That is hysterical. I need a bird.
Yes.
Oh my God.
You need to work with her, get her to do a View to a Kill from Live Aid, and she can kind of you can hit the notes that Simon didn't.
If you do it, I will host it on Daily Durani. I will put it on the front damn page. Oh my God.
All right, there's bonus content you don't get on other YouTube shows.